Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Thursday. I hope you're having a good one wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. As always, thank you very much for joining me as we head towards the weekend. We head towards Arsenal game against Crystal Palace on Sunday. Still basking, I think, in the glory of that really, really impressive Champions League win on Tuesday night against Atletico Madrid. So we're going to talk about the Crystal Palace game a little bit later on in the show today. Look at some of the changes Mikel might make. This is his third game in the space of 7 days. He made a couple in the Champions League, probably going to make at least a couple more. You would expect some players coming back in who maybe didn't play in the Champions League, and maybe there's scope for a couple of other changes. So we'll talk about that, look at possible suggestions. We're going to talk about Gabriel Jesus, who is getting closer and closer to an Arsenal return. He shared some really encouraging footage on his social media of him out training on the pitches. So we'll talk about that, have a little look at that video. Got some questions and some comments from you guys. Look at what Martin Odegaard has had to say about his recovery and his rehab with that knee injury that is, which is of course ruling him out of action right now. So plenty to get stuck into. But we'll start with Gabriel Jesus, who's obviously a little bit of a forgotten man at Arsenal, hasn't played since that horrible knee injury sustained in the FA Cup third round defeat against Manchester United last season. What a horrible afternoon that was at the Emirates. But we're getting closer to a return for Gabriel Jesus. What this will mean for the season, who knows? We don't know yet. There's obviously been talk about a possible return to Brazil for Gabriel Jesus, maybe on loan or something like that in January, to try and get minutes up, to try and get himself in contention for a World Cup spot. Should that happen? Not in my view. I don't think so. I think he should absolutely stay. I've said it before. I just think sod it. I know the money men probably want as much money as they can in, or some wages off the books and all of that, because of the huge outlay that Arsenal had in the summer without really bringing anything in. But I just think when you've gone this far, when you've built a squad like this, and you've gone all in on a season like Arsenal really have on this season, then you may as well see it out. By all means, in the summer with Gabriel Jesus, when he'll have a year left on his deal, then try and get a move for Gabriel Jesus, because I think long-term we all know that he's not going to be a really key figure in this Arsenal squad and team moving forward. But just for now, if he can just help in one game between January and May, and that ends up winning Arsenal the league, then it is all going to be worth it. I just think you stay all in on this. And I do think if he can get himself fit and he can get himself sharp, as he showed last season before the injury, he can be very useful. Still, he's the type of forward Arsenal don't have. You look at the two that they've got in the squad at the moment, Gyökeres and Havertz. Jesus is a completely different profile. When it comes to breaking down low blocks, there's probably no better forward in the Arsenal squad than Gabriel Jesus being able to do that because of his ability in tight spaces in and around the penalty area. So I'm not expecting him to have a major part to play in Arsenal's season, and if he stays for the second half of it. But I do think there is the possibility of him making becoming an influence in at least a game or a few games, and that could prove decisive. So anyway, he has shared a video. I'm going to try and bring this up now of himself. Here we go. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see what I'm talking about here. It's him with the caption "Last Push," and it's him at obviously London Colney working with the fitness coaches at Arsenal with the ball at his feet, properly moving around, twisting, getting shots away. You can see it's pretty high intensity stuff. There's a couple of different videos that he shared as well, but you see there the sort of the twists and the turns that he's doing. This is a really important part of his rehab and recovery when you get to this stage where you can really start to put pressure on that knee and put a lot of load into that knee. We're not seeing any contact training from him yet. All of this is him doing stuff on his own, getting shots away on his own, just working closely with the fitness coaches. But it's clearly a good finishing as well. It'd be nice to see him tuck a goal away like that in real time if he does get hit. But it just shows he is getting closer, and as does the caption, "Last Push." It's really, really tantalizing prospect, I think, and great for him. This must have been such a difficult time for Gabriel Jesus. Just finally get yourself back in the team, playing well, scoring goals as he did at the end of last season. Halfway through last season, and then suddenly you're injured again, and you're facing up to 9 months on the sideline in a really crucial part for Arsenal and for Brazil, of course, with the World Cup looming large. So fingers crossed he gets back, and he gets back very quickly. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below about Gabriel Jesus' return. What do you think Arsenal should do with him when he is back? If it is December, maybe if we get him back potentially for the, I don't know, festive period feels a little bit early. We'll see when he does do some contact training. But where are we now? where are we now? October the 23rd. I mean, if he starts, probably January is probably the realistic option when you look at Jesus. Maybe the start of January, maybe Christmas. But if he is back involved in that time, what do you think Mikel Arteta should do with Gabriel Jesus? Let me know your thoughts on it all in the comments below. Right, from one Brazilian to the other, let's talk about Gabriel Martinelli. Obviously had a really good week, or really good game in midweek in the Champions League, scored a brilliant goal, played very, very well, caused Atletico plenty of problems. He had a really good season so far. Gabriel Martinelli is producing, he's scoring goals, he's setting goals up, playing really, really well in the Champions League. Came in, sort of seized his moment in midweek after watching Leandro Trossard score the winner against Fulham at the weekend in the Premier League. So what's Mikel going to do when you look at the game this weekend against Crystal Palace? Martinelli, you would think, has given himself a really good shout of starting that game. Trossard's probably been ahead of him in the pecking order so far this season. But Martinelli's going to give him, he's really sort of thrust himself to the attention of Mikel Arteta. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you look at the starting 11 that started against Atletico. It's here on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. So obviously you got Timber started at right back. There was no Ben White. I thought Ben White might start the game, but he went with Timber. The change he did make at fullback was on the other side when Luis Skelly came in for Calafiori. And then you had Gabriel Martinelli obviously starting in place of Leandro Trossard. So that was the 11 that we saw. Just a couple of changes from the game against Fulham. So this is going to be the third game in 8 days for Arsenal on Sunday. So what is Mikel going to do? We've got a League Cup game coming up next week where there's clearly going to be wholesale changes in that game. Probably a couple, maybe one player might start, who's been starting in the Premier League, might start in the League Cup game. So I don't think we're going to see masses of rotation for the game against Crystal Palace. It's clearly a hugely important game against a very good team, one of the most informed teams in the Premier League right now. So initially when the team sheet came out for the game against Atletico and I saw the lineup, I was like, well, Ben White's definitely going to start against Crystal Palace. The more I think about it, the more I don't think that's the case. I think he's going to stick with Timber for that game. It's been 5 days from Tuesday night to Sunday. So it's a decent rest period for Arsenal. And I think Ben White will 100% play in the League Cup game. So I imagine Mikel's probably going to stick with Timber for that game. I see Ricardo Calafiori coming back in despite Miles Lewis-Skelly's excellent performance. And to be honest, I probably see Leandro Trossard coming back in as well, even though Martinelli got that goal and played so well against Atletico. I think Trossard at the moment seems to be ahead of Martinelli in the pecking order in the Premier League. Mikel was speaking about the Miles and Gabby and the impact they had in midweek. And he said, I think Miles and Gabby were superb. They were ready from the beginning. The boys that came in, we've used them in different ways again. We need to try and keep them all involved. And if they have a chance to play and they play at that level, then it's a joy because it's going to elevate our daily training sessions. That will mean the standard will be higher and we will compete better. On whether that competition for places that Arsenal have right now is sort of driving the team on and helping this winning run that they're on. He said it's what we need. And when you look at the top teams in Europe, that's what they have. We have to manage it in a really cohesive system when everybody understands that they're going to have different roles throughout the game or in different games. But at the end, the outcome is to earn the right to win games. And that's the ultimate goal. And we are seeking the same thing. And that competition for places at Arsenal, it's so important. And that's why I talk about Gabriel Jesus' return and why I wouldn't be pushing him out the door early on in January, and talk about Kai Havertz's imminent return, and just give my thoughts on how important I think that is going to be for the team, for Victor Gyökeres, for everyone. That competition is going to, if Arsenal do what we hope they're going to do this season, then that competition for places that they now have in the squad is going to be so integral for that. Keeping players happy is going to be integral to that. Using them well, balancing the squad, managing minutes, all of that sort of stuff, which is going to fall on Arteta. That's going to be vitally important as well. But we're seeing the benefit of the big squad at the moment. We're seeing the impact substitutions are making. And it's helping, and we've just got to carry it on. So let me know your thoughts ahead of the game against Crystal Palace this weekend. What changes do you think Mikel should make in this one? Do you think it's keeping things, relatively similar, just maybe one or two? Or do you think 3 games in 8 days, let's give some proper rotation for this one? I think I'm leaning towards minimal rotation and obviously widespread rotation in the League Cup game. Right, one player who's not going to be involved, obviously, is Martin Odegaard, the captain. He's suffering with that knee injury and trying to get back as quickly as possible. With that, we're not really sure yet on a timescale for Martin Odegaard at the moment. We know he's going to be out until after the next international break. The hope is it'll be back, for that Spurs game after the international break. Whether that's the case is going to depend on all the rehab and recovery that is going on now and how quickly his body reacts and heals. He says it's hard work, long days in recovery, but that's what you want. And I feel like it's going well so far. I feel like I've been really unlucky at times this season. It was a knee-to-knee contact. And at the time, I didn't know if it was bad or not. It was quite painful. Normally, you could run it off. That's why I tried to keep going to see if I was going to get better. I was hoping it was just a knock that would improve in a couple of minutes, but it didn't. And I felt like something was wrong. So in the end, it was better to come off. As soon as we got inside, the medical team had a proper look at it. And when the adrenaline stopped flowing, it settled down and it was quite sore. It's tricky to set a return date with this type of injury because especially it being my left leg, a lot depends on how it goes when I start getting back on the pitch. Sometimes it can be quite sore when you start passing the ball and shooting and all of these things with that leg. So it's really hard to set a date. All I can say is I'm progressing really well at the moment. I think we will know more when I start getting back on the training pitches and we'll see how it goes. If that goes really well, then it can be quick. I didn't really think about it. The fact that obviously it's his left leg and that might sort of impact on the recovery a bit because when he does come back on the pitch, most of the work he's going to be doing is on that left leg. So there's going to be even more load and stress being put on that left knee because Martin is obviously so predominantly left-footed. And you never really kind of think of it like that. You just think, oh, it's the same with both legs. But clearly, from what he's saying here, it's not. I think Odegaard's absence, I think we realise just how important he is to this team when he's not in the side, Odegaard. He has his critics. I know he does. Every player has his critics, obviously. I think he's had a really good start to the season, Martin Odegaard. To be fair, I think he's really beginning to it. He's really been influencing games when he's been on the pitch. Unfortunately, he's just not been on the pitch enough to really make a huge impact on the team. But when he's played, comes on at Newcastle, immediately changes the game. When he's been playing in the little bits and pieces, he's been on the pitch in the home games. He's had some decent games as well. Brilliant in the Champions League. Of course, there was really good signs, I think, from what we've seen from Odegaard this season, that he's been getting back towards something like his best, but it's just been so stop-start. But I think when he's not there, Arsenal clearly miss him because you play Eze there at the moment, really good player. Love the fact that he's at Arsenal, but he's not Martin Odegaard. He plays in a different way, and I think you see that when he's on the pitch. He's not as involved as Martin Odegaard. Even when Ethan's on the pitch, who I think's done very well when he's been on the pitch this season, clearly Arsenal miss something when Odegaard's not there. So it's going to be hugely important when he gets back. But again, the fact we've got this squad, the fact that Eze can fill in, the fact that Ethan Nwaneri can fill in, even Mikel Merino can fill in, just shows the strength and depth that Arsenal have. And hopefully will ensure that during this little period while we're waiting for the captain to get back, then the results keep ticking over as they are at the moment. 6 wins on the spin. I mean, you can't complain too much about that. So that's the latest from Martin Odegaard as he continues his recovery from his knee injury. Right, let's go through a few questions now, shall we, before we wrap this one up. There's one from Max here. It says, until Havertz comes back, who would you like to see at centre forward at times when we give Gyökeres a rest? I was really underwhelmed with Merino in that role at the end of the Atletico game. I prefer Trossard at centre forward. I think back to the Bilbao game when both Martinelli and Trossard came on late and combined so well. I think those two have potential as a great left wing centre forward pairing when Gyökeres is off. It makes me think of what Ancelotti was testing out with Martinelli and Vinny Jr. in the last Brazil game. I think I would probably say Martinelli at the moment, but I can understand why it's Merino just for that, the way Arsenal play and for the physical presence in and around the central areas. But I think Martinelli's in such good form at the moment. He's causing teams problems. I think he's very similar. Well, not very similar, but he's more similar to Gyökeres when it comes to sort of running the channels and giving Arsenal that option. Merino's not going to do that. Obviously, he's going to come deep, face the game, face the ball, have his back to goal many a times. And that's going to allow teams to sort of push up a little bit higher against Arsenal and just sit in that real sort of block position with the midfield and defence close together. When you've got someone making the defenders run the other way, which Gyökeres does, obviously, and I think Martinelli would do as well, then teams are going to drop deeper, defences are going to drop deeper. The space between midfield and the defence could be bigger, and the Arsenal could benefit from that. So personally, my view is I think Martinelli would be my option, but I can understand why Mikel goes with Merino. And to be honest, I think Mikel will continue to go with Merino, despite what you think, Max, and what I think. I think he'll continue to go with Merino. But thank you very much for that one. Toby says, I still think Eze should be moved to the left to play from that inside left position. Even in an England shirt, he doesn't seem comfortable with a relative lack of space in the centre number 10 role of the pitch. From the left, he can see the whole pitch looking inwards and not worry about anything behind him. I mean, I don't disagree with that, I have to say. there seems to be a real sort of groundswell of opinion that he needs to play in the centre. And when he started off at Arsenal, when he had that game, like he played against Newcastle on the left, didn't he? And there seemed to be a real sort of pylon of why is Mikel playing him on the left-hand side? But at Palace, he played on the left. He obviously had a lot of freedom and he came into central areas, but he did start on the left of that three. You had, say, Mateta in the middle, you had Eze on the left, and you had Sarr on the right. And he came in off that left-hand side and he performed really, really well there. So I don't disagree with you here at all, Toby. I don't think he necessarily has to play at the 10, but it seemed to be when he was playing on the left-hand side, a large sort of swell of the opinion was that he needed to be moved into central areas. Since Mikel's done that, I don't think he's done badly in that area. I think, as I said earlier, I think he's very different to Martin Odegaard, for example, when he plays in that position, but he's had some good performances. I thought he was very good at times against Newcastle when he played in that sort of central area. He got some shots away at times, and I think he's done pretty well. He's obviously did well against Man City when he came on in that position. I don't think he did badly in midweek against Atletico. I thought a lot of the good things Arsenal did in the first half came through Eze in that central positions. But I do agree that I think on the left-hand side, there's still a real opportunity to play him there. And I think he'll be very comfortable there and do well. But I think it'd be important if he is playing in that position that he's not being asked to be an out-and-out touchline winger. He's certainly going to be given the option to come inside and play and move into those central areas where he can be such a threat. The last red coat has got in touch now. He says the set piece hate is nothing new. We were hated for our prowess at corners in the 80s and 90s. There has always been an anti-Arsenal narrative because when we win the league, we're always knocking the current media darlings off their perch. Liverpool in the 80s, United later demonstrated this, and now it's Liverpool again. And although I wouldn't say City are all that popular, they are nobody's hated rival. Fans had been accepting of their dominance since it is less offensive than the upstarts at Arsenal, whose success triggers many fan bases. I certainly agree with that. I mean, to be fair, I fall into that category as well. So many times when it's been so City and Liverpool, I've got so many Liverpool mates and I've got no Manchester City mates. So I always was of the opinion of, just let City beat them because I don't want my mates being able to give it to me all the time about how they're champions. And City I always viewed as as you say there, the sort of least offensive of the two there, because I didn't have to deal with any Manchester City mates when they won the title. So I get that. And I think you're definitely right. The likes of West Ham, Spurs, Chelsea, all of that lot would much rather see City win than Arsenal. So they'd much rather pile on and, have a go at Arsenal for anything like we're seeing with the set pieces. And you're right, it is nothing new under George Graham in the 80s and 90s. Obviously, the set piece kings at Arsenal were there. Steve Bold with a flick on Tony Adams, Alan Smith coming in at the back post and nodding it in. Had to get a lot of grief there. The 1-0 to the Arsenal, boring Arsenal, all that sort of stuff. So it is nothing new. But how nice was it back in those days to just shut everyone up and get your hands on a Premier League trophy? Well, not Premier League trophy. That was Arsene Wenger, but a First Division Championship trophy like we did with George Graham. All the cup wins as well. It was so nice to just shut them all up by winning those trophies. So fingers crossed we can do that as well this season. We've got here one from, what is that? Deck Duckfield, I think. It says, question, if we win either the Champions League or the Premier League and Big Gabby continues to play and be as influential as he is, where does he sit along the pantheon of all-time Arsenal centre-backs? Well, if he gets his hand on significant trophies, he's going to be absolutely in the mix. I'm already seeing people, talk about this back four and say this is the best back four in Arsenal's history. And just the fact that that's even being discussed right now when you're going up against, one of the greatest back fours of English football history that Arsenal had back in the day under George Graham. Even the fact that this lot now are being discussed alongside them shows how well they were doing. But the difference is that the old back four, back five, if you want to include Martin Keown in that, which he absolutely will want you to do, they had trophies to show for it. So many pictures of them sitting in front of league title trophies, FA Cups, League Cups, Cup Winners' Cup. And that's what these lot need to do. So like you said, if they go on and they win the big trophies, if they win Arsenal the Champions League for the first time in the club's history, they will be remembered as some of the best defenders that the club has ever seen. Saliba and Gabriel will be viewed as one of the best centre-back partnerships the club has ever seen, and deservedly so, because they will be one of the best partnerships the world has ever seen. And like I said yesterday in Inside Arsenal Extra Time with James Bencher, I genuinely think Gabriel's the best centre-back in the world right now. I think he's performing at such a level. He's been so influential at both ends of the pitch. There's no better centre-back in the world, I don't think. And I think if you ask William Saliba that, he would say exactly the same thing. And long may that continue. So thank you very much for your question there, And that is it for me today, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'll be back a little bit later on today for Inside Arsenal Patreon members for the Arsenal Press Pass show, myself and Simon Collins and Sam Dean. So look out for that one if you are an Inside Arsenal Patreon member. If you're not a member yet and you want to join up and become a member, you can find the link down below in the video or podcast description. Go straight to patreon.com, sign up direct through there, and you get access to shows like the Press Pass, like the FPL show, which will be going out tomorrow. You get access to Discord, the community chat server, all that sort of stuff, and giveaways as well, which are held throughout the month. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, everyone. I'll speak to you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.